All right, here's my video for graphing this one on 53. And it is definitely a tougher one because our b value is 2 pi over 3. We have an amplitude change where we're multiplying the function by -1, and then we have a vertical shift of a +2, and we want to account for all of that. And the first thing I do when I graph is I start with figuring out what the period is. And there is going to be a period shift because that b value is not equal to 1. And so what I do is I take 2 pi, because that's the period of a sine function, and I divide it by the b value. And the b value in this case is that odd thing, so that's going to be 2 pi divided by this odd b value, which is 2 pi over 3. This is a situation of keep, change, flip, so I'm going to keep the numerator, which is 2 pi over 1, change it to multiplication, and flip the denominator, so that is 3 over 2 pi. Here, we're going to multiply, but these would cancel out 2 pi because there's one on top, one on bottom. So the 2 pi's cancel out, and you're just left with a period of 3. So there's not a pi in here, but that's okay. And then the next thing I want to do is find the step that I will take to go from the start point to the end point. And to find my step, I just take my period, which is 3 now, and I divide it by 4. And so I'm going to have a step of 3/4 to go from my start point to my end point. Now I want to figure out what that start point and end point are. And to do that, for this sine function, I'm going to say, okay, the start, let's set this equal to 0. So that's like that bx minus c equals 0. Well, that's what we have here. So that is 2 pi over 3 times x equals 0 for the start. And then for the end, same kind of thing, bx minus c equals 2 pi this time, because that's usually where we have the function end. And so we do 2 pi over 3 times x equals 2 pi. Solving these both, well, here I'd have to divide over, but 0 divided by anything is going to be 0, so my start point is just x equals 0. Here, I've already done this. I've already solved this here. If I end up dividing both sides by 2 pi over 3, I end up actually doing what I did earlier on here to find period, because 2 pi divided by b. And so ultimately, this is going to be x equals 3. So that tells me that the function starts at 0, ends at 3, and I'm taking this 3/4 step to get there. I think that I'm ready to make my table, and I already have done my vertical, or I've done my period change, and I've done any kind of horizontal shift even though there wasn't one. And so the other ones, like amplitude change and a vertical shift up and down, is going to happen when we actually have our table set up. So let's create that table. All right, and I'm going to plug in my x values that would go into the function, the sine of 2 pi over 3 times x, and then I'll make one for my y values. That will be my outputs. Again, I start at 0, and I'm taking this 3/4 step until I hit 3, so it goes 0 to 3 over 4, adding another 3 over 4, that's 6 over 4, adding another, that's 9 over 4, and then I would get 12 over 4, but that's the same thing as 3. All right, and I haven't done anything in terms of amplitude change yet, or I haven't done any kind of vertical shift up or down, and this is a sine function. And so in my basic sine function, it goes 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. Okay, now I'm going to first do my amplitude change, because amplitude comes first, then the vertical shift comes second, because multiplication should come before addition or subtraction in our order of operations. That's the way I remember it. So the first thing I'm going to do is -1 times y, to account for that amplitude change. And it's really more of a reflecting than it is an amplitude change, and that's just because we're using -1. But I'll just take all my y values, multiply it by -1, so 0 times -1, that's still 0. Multiply it by 1 here, that's -1, 0, +1, 0. And then the last thing I need to do is add my shift up and down. So that's -1 y, and now I'm going to add 2, because I have a +2 here on the outside. And when I do that, I'm going to get my final y values. And that will be 2, 1, 2, 3, 2. And I'm going to use those y's and these x's up here to graph. So making my table here, it goes 0. Then the first one is 3/4, then 6/4, then 9/4, then 12/4, which is the same thing as 3. I am up here at 1, 2, and 3. The first one is at 0, 2, so that's my first point. And then I go over 3/4, I'm at 1. Up here, and I get my, that one's kind of a bad plotted point, but I get my sine function here that has been shifted, It's really been reflected as well. And we have this period change, even though the graph doesn't really reflect that as much as it could. That would be my graphed function here. Okay, and again, it's just following the same steps I would do for any problem, even when they get difficult like this. I start with the period, even though it's a weird one, it's just 3, I can still go from there. I found my step, which is I'm just adding 3/4 to go from start to end, figured out where my start point was, where my end point was, created the table, added my amplitude change, added my vertical shift up to, got my points, and graphed them. Okay, I'm going to do an additional one, but I'm going to make it in a separate video so again that I don't run out of time, and I'm going to be doing the last one here, which is problem 37.